8.5 million people live in New York City. Most of them will tell you the wildest thing in this town is the subway at 2 in the morning. They are wrong. Right now, in the middle of Manhattan, inside a park with traffic on all four sides, there is a pair of wild predators that hunt after dark and raise their young in the brush. Nobody released them. Nobody put them there. They walked in on their own, and the city decided to let them stay. That is the last animal on this list. Before we reach it, we are going to travel from the far northern edge of New York State down into the 5 boroughs, and every animal will be closer to your front door than the one before it. By the end, the distance is measured in feet. If this is your kind of thing, real animals in real places, no nonsense, then subscribing genuinely helps. It is free, it takes 1 second, and it tells me to keep digging these up. Now, let's start about 300 miles north of Times Square. Number 12, the moose. Start on a 2-lane road in the Adirondacks, an hour after sunset. Pine on both sides, no streetlights, no shoulder. Somewhere in those woods stand several hundred moose. A bull can reach 7 feet at the shoulder and weigh over 1,000 pounds. And according to the state's own wildlife agency, an adult moose in New York has no natural predators at all. Nothing here hunts them. So what actually kills them is us, and the way it happens is the part people never think about. The state describes it plainly. A moose is so tall that a car usually passes underneath the body. The animal does not get knocked forward. It comes over the hood, into the windshield, and onto the roof. Between 1% and 2% of moose vehicle collisions in New York kill a person inside the car. And moose move most between dusk and dawn, when their eyes sit above the reach of your headlights, so nothing shines back at you. You do not see it. You hear it. But 300 miles is a long way from a doorstep. Let's cut that distance. Number 11, the Massasauga rattlesnake. New York has exactly 3 venomous snakes. Not 9, not 15, 3. And the rarest of them lives in the wetlands of western New York, where almost nobody looks for it. The Massasauga is a small, thick-bodied rattlesnake that people insist on calling a pygmy rattler, which is not its name and not its species. It is genuinely hard to find, and it is protected. Here is why it belongs on this list anyway. Everything you think you know about rattlesnakes comes from westerns, where the rattle is loud and gives you a clear warning. A Massasauga's rattle is small. In a marsh with wind in the reeds and water moving, people walk past one and never hear a thing. It relies on stillness rather than flight, which means the danger is not that it charges you. The danger is that you step where it is already lying. From here, we move east, toward the ridges above the Hudson, and toward the 2 snakes you might actually meet. Number 10, the fisher. Most New Yorkers have never heard the word fisher, and the ones who have usually call it a fisher cat, which is wrong twice over. It is not a cat. It is a member of the weasel family, dark brown, low to the ground, with a long body and semi-retractable claws that let it climb a tree trunk like a squirrel. It is also one of the very few predators anywhere that routinely kills and eats porcupines. Take a second with that. It has worked out how to fight something covered entirely in spines, and it wins. What matters for this list is where it lives now. Over the past 12 years, fisher populations have spread across every part of New York State, north of Rockland and Westchester counties. That is not a wilderness boundary. That is the commuter belt. And the noise they make at night is a genuinely awful scream, close enough to a human voice that people call the police about it. 200 miles gone. Now, the snakes. Number 9, the timber rattlesnake. The timber rattlesnake is the biggest venomous snake in New York, and it lives closer to the city than almost anyone believes. Its main range is the southeastern part of the state, everywhere except Long Island and New York City itself, which puts established populations roughly 2 hours' drive from Midtown. It is listed as threatened, so it is protected by law, and it wants nothing to do with you. That is exactly why the encounters that do happen are so uncomfortable. In the town of Wawarsing, in Ulster County, a homeowner called the state because a timber rattlesnake had settled in on their porch, not in the woods behind the house. On the porch, positioned in front of the only exit the building had, an officer had to come out and move it. Late August into September is when the young appear, which is also peak hiking season on those same rocky ridges above the Hudson. Same habitat, one step closer to houses, brings us to the second snake. Number 8, the copperhead. The copperhead is the one that gets into yards. It shares the rattlesnake's preference for warm rock and broken ledge across the Hudson Valley, but it comes with a design problem for us. It has no rattle. There is no warning sound at all. Its camouflage is a copper and tan hourglass pattern that disappears completely against dead leaves, and its instinct when something big approaches is to freeze rather than run. So, the snake's plan and your plan are in direct conflict. It holds perfectly still and trusts that you cannot see it, and you keep walking. On the 3rd of May, a state environmental officer was called to a house in New Paltz. A snake had been found underneath an outdoor staircase, tucked against the steps of somebody's home. It was identified as a copperhead, removed, and relocated. That is under the stairs of a residential building. And now we leave the land, because the next 2 are in the water where New Yorkers swim. We are halfway. Everything up to this point has been on land, and everything from here gets closer and more crowded. If you are still watching, drop the name of your state in the comments, because there is a good chance it is already on my list. Then stay with me, because the next one lives in a bay full of boats and swimmers. Number 7, the sand tiger shark. In January of 2016, scientists working with the New York Aquarium announced something that changed how people look at the water off Long Island. In the Great South Bay, the shallow, busy, family-friendly stretch of water behind the barrier islands, they had found a shark nursery. Not sharks passing through, a nursery. The species is the sand tiger, a shark that grows past 9 feet, with rows of thin needle teeth that stick out of its closed mouth so it looks permanently furious. The young use that bay from a few months old up to around 5 years, and the tagging data showed something even stranger. Individual sharks tagged in earlier seasons came back to the same section of the same bay. Scientists call that site fidelity. It means those animals know that water. They are not lost. They chose it. The species is protected, and it has never been the sort of shark that hunts people, but it is there, under the boats, in the same bay. And the next one absolutely is the sort that hunts. Number 6, the bobcat. The state's wildlife biologists have now documented bobcats in every single county of upstate New York. Everyone. They are absent from just 2 places, New York City and Long Island, which means the animal has quietly filled in the entire map right up to the city line and then stopped. A bobcat is roughly twice the size of a house cat, built almost entirely out of shoulder and hind leg, and it hunts by sitting still for a very long time, and then covering the last 10 feet faster than you can turn your head. you will almost certainly never see one, and that is not because they are rare anymore. It is because they see you first. The closest confirmed appearance is worth saying out loud. In the village of Ardsley in Westchester County, about 10 miles from the Bronx, a homeowner photographed a bobcat standing in her own backyard. 10 miles. Now we go to the animal that does not stop at the city line. Number 5. The black bear. Black bears are back in Westchester County, and they are not staying in the woods. In White Plains, a city of tens of thousands of people, police were called because a bear was moving through residential streets and ended up clinging to a tree in a neighborhood. In Yorktown, sightings came in near 2 main roads. In Bedford, a bear was filmed working its way through somebody's bird feeder, which is the single most common reason bears come into a yard in the first place. And in Harrison, the story ended the way these stories sometimes end, with police putting the animal down in a residential area. Here is the detail that makes this land properly. White Plains is a Metro-North stop. On a peak express train, you can be at Grand Central in about 40 minutes. So, a bear was in the streets of a town that is a 40-minute train ride from the middle of Manhattan. From here on, everything on this list is inside the 5 boroughs. Number 4. The common snapping turtle. This one is in the city already, and people swim, fish, and paddle right past it. The common snapping turtle is native to New York, and it lives in the ponds, lakes, and slow water inside city parks. It looks like something that did not get the memo about the last few million years. A heavy ridged shell, thick tail, and a head far too large for the body. In the water, it is calm and wants nothing from you. On land, cornered, it is a completely different animal. It cannot pull fully into its shell the way other turtles do, so its entire defense is offense. The neck extends much further and much faster than the shape of the animal suggests, and the jaws are built to hold rather than to slice. The rule from every wildlife officer is the same. Do not pick it up, do not stand in front of it, and never put your hand into murky water to find out what is down there. Now the one that made headlines in Manhattan. Number 3, the rabid raccoon. Between 2009 and 2011, New York City had a genuine rabies outbreak in the middle of Manhattan, not upstate, Central Park. In the 6 years before it started, exactly 1 rabid raccoon had been found on the island. Then 12 turned up in 2009, and by the middle of February 2010, the count for Manhattan that year alone had already reached 39. By the end, 138 rabid raccoons were reported in and around Central Park. The city's response was enormous. Health department teams trapped, vaccinated, and released close to 500 raccoons in and around the park to build a wall of immune animals. It worked, but it did not end there. In 2019, 4 more rabid raccoons were confirmed in and around Inwood Hill Park. And in May of this year, the city was still dropping oral rabies vaccine baits in the parkland of Brooklyn and Queens. This is an animal that raids your bins, and rabies is spread by a bite. 2 left. Number 2, the white shark. The stretch of ocean between Long Island and the New Jersey coast is called the New York Bight, and it holds a title no other water in the North Atlantic can claim. It is the only confirmed great white shark nursery on this side of the ocean. The state says it directly. Juvenile white sharks use Long Island's coastal ocean as nursery habitat through the entire warm season, and adults of the species reach over 18 feet. Then came the summers that made it real for swimmers. In 2022, New York recorded 8 bites, a record for the area. The The following July, 3 swimmers were bitten off Long Island beaches inside a single afternoon at Quogue Village Beach and near Fire Island, one day after a 15-year-old surfer was bitten at Kismet. Beaches on the South Shore emptied, and Rockaway, a public beach inside New York City, has been closed on shark sightings. Researchers give one piece of advice above all others. Young white sharks feed on menhaden, the silver fish that school just off the sand. So, if you are swimming inside a bait ball, get out. And now, the animal in the park. Number 1, the coyote. Coyotes have been in New York City since the 1930s. City officials will tell you most of the coyotes here trace back to one original group that arrived in the Bronx, which makes them multi-generational New Yorkers, and they now live in the Bronx, in Queens, and in Manhattan. But the animal itself is not what you think it is. DNA work on coyotes in the Northeast shows they are hybrids. Depending on the study and the location, they run roughly 60 to 84% coyote, with 8 to 25% wolf and a smaller share of domestic dog. That wolf ancestry is why the eastern coyote is bigger than the western one, holds a larger territory, and will take an adult deer, something a western coyote generally cannot do. And this is the animal that finished the job. Inside Central Park, 843 acres surrounded on every side by one of the densest cities on Earth, a bonded pair of these hybrids has settled in as residents. Not passing through, living there, every night while a couple of million people sleep within a mile of them. So look at the shape of this list. We started 300 miles north on a black road in the Adirondacks and finished in a park you can walk to from a subway stop. Nothing on this list was introduced. Nothing escaped from a zoo. Every one of these animals either never left or worked out on its own that a city is not a wall, it is a habitat with different furniture. Bird feeders instead of berry patches. Bins instead of carcasses. Bait fish off a public beach. 843 acres of brush in the middle of Manhattan. New York did not push the wild out to the edges. It built 8.5 million kitchens, and then it left the back door open. The animals did not invade. They accepted the invitation, same as they did in California, in Texas, and in Florida, which are all sitting right there on your screen. If you made it this far, you are exactly who I make these for. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.